Hello everybody, how's it going today? Glowplasma231 here, back in today to talk about World Trigger, chapter number 237. This chapter is titled The Away Mission Test, Part 33. Now, I need to come clean here real fast. It has been a long while since I've done a World Trigger chapter review. As with most of the things on this channel, life has been getting in the way a lot recently. But with all my schooling out of the way up until the new Christmas holiday coming up, or whatever holiday season you count December as, I've got a lot more time now, so it's time to get back into gear and get talking about World Trigger back again. This was actually a chapter that came out in October of 2023, so like I said, it's been out for a few months, I just haven't had the time to cover it. And with that, I'm also maybe a little bit rusty at this, just because I haven't talked about World Trigger in like 2 months. And I haven't really read any World Trigger in like, well actually, I take that back. I reread like the first 100 chapters over a weekend here like a month ago. But that's besides the point. It's time for World Trigger, chapter number 237 review. So, last time what happened on World Trigger, it was pretty much all about the away mission test. And, well, not really. It was about a different side of the away mission test, right? Of course, we had the conflict between E.M.M.I and E.M.M.I, who are both on, I think, what is it? Squad 12? Let me pull out my trusty World Trigger Volume 24 and look at the title reference page. Where is E.M.M.I Squad? E.M.M.I Squad 8. Like I said, I'm rusty. And so they were both sitting there sort of having a big conflict with each other and pretty much just talking about it. And eventually, E.M.M.I sort of said something about how, hey, E.M.M.I, it's your fault that Hateno ended up leaving Border and disappearing, right? Or leaving Border, he actually didn't know that she disappeared at that point. And we had a big flashback about what happened to Hateno and E.M.M.I sort of learning the story, right? As we sort of start off this chapter with E.M.M.I sort of just thinking, like, so Hateno joined some outsiders to smuggle herself into the neighborhood, right? And as he's thinking about this, E.M.M.I is, of course, just continuing on what he's saying. And he says, hey, but that's enough about my previous squad. Back to the conversation at hand. E.M.M.I, given everything you just heard, I want you to ace this test with your on strength, right? And E.M.M.I is just like, okay, E.M.M.I. I get the whole you tell me about Hateno part, right? But what is the connection between these two things? Like, what's going on here? And as he's saying this, E.M.M.I just says, the leadership team is wary of others emulating what Hateno did. Because, of course, yeah, that's a big deal if somebody just is like, I don't want to be here in the thing over more, and I'm going to go to the neighborhood, right? That's not really what Border wants. So E.M.M.I just says, E.M.M.I's like, so you think they're worried I'd flunk this test? If I'd flunked this test, I'd end up joining some other bandits or whatever to get into the neighborhood to go along with everybody? And these people are like, I'd never do that, right? But E.M.M.I sort of just holds over a second. He's like, never. Can you truly say that with such certainty? What if Hateno herself had invited you to join as a stowaway, right? And he pretty much just says, can you say you would have truly turned her down back then? E.M.M.I continues just saying, after not being selected, if you were able to express a desire to search for Hateno, don't you think that the others on Kakariko squad would have leapt at the chance to enable you to go? Right? Pretty much. Let me move my cat out of the way. But yeah, E.M.M.I has a great point here just saying, can you truly say that you would never just go away and go on an away mission not sanctioned by Border, right? And as E.M.M.I continues, just like, hypotheticals like that are really moot right now, but for now, I just want you to quash any lingering doubts and make it onto the away mission through proper channels, right? And he pretty much just says, that was my point. Which, yeah, makes a whole lot of sense. E.M.M.I then continues just going like, hey, E.M.M.I, are you sure that they'd be okay that you told me all of that? And E.M.M.I is just like, leadership gave me permission during my captain's briefing before a test, right? He says, once you pass this test, I'll reveal even more. Which, I really do like this moment because it is truly saying that, yeah, E.M.M.I believes that E.M.M.I has got what it takes to fully pass this test and get onto the away mission, right? He's saying that, like just the phrasing of, once you pass this test, yeah, E.M.M.I knows he's going to be able to do it, and this was just one way to light a fire under E.M.M.I's ass to get him to go up and, yep, go on the away mission. Do it properly, right? And, of course, E.M.M.I just ends it off like, understood, so now let's get some sleep. As all of the lights go off, and as they're just sleeping there, Emma's just laying in his bed. He's just looking up at the ceiling, just staring off into space and just thinking. And he just thinks, like, if she'd asked me to get smuggled out with her, would I have really taken her up? As he just looks over towards Ninomiya and he's just like, what would Ninomiya do in my shoes? He and his squad don't seem like the types to make risky, reckless moves, and yet he just thinks about all of that, and he thinks about what, what's the name, Ninomiya said a few chapters ago, which was like, but that doesn't make me now take any of this lying down. I need to hear her reasons directly, right? Because that was the big deal of Ninomiya, as much as he wants to get her back, he wants to hear her reasons for being a traitor in a way, to hear her actual thoughts, right? And as Emma finally goes to bed, he's like, I guess I do feel that very same way. And at that point, we get to the sealed environment phase, end of day 4. What, that only took like, I don't know, 37-ish chapters to get through 4 days? That's not too bad, right? But as we start off the next day, sealed environment phase, day 5, we see in the morning that Emma's like in the bathroom, like freshening up, right? Just like taking a washcloth, wiping it over his face, and eventually he's just doing all of this stuff, splashing water on his face, and eventually just walks out, and we see that Chica's standing out there, and she's like, oh, hey, good morning, Yuzuru, and he's just like, hey, good morning, and he says, hey, Amatori, I'm also going to try even harder today, and Chica sort of just has this look of, oh, and she's eventually just like, oh, that's great. It'll be a joint effort then, right? As all of our squad mates look over. And at this point, we cut over to Sua Squad 7, where we see that the whole group is, what I'm guessing is eating breakfast, right? I mean, I don't know Japanese breakfast food that well, so I don't know if I mean, it looks like most of them, like, Sua clearly has an egg with toast on it. And it looks like Yui has, like, half a piece of bread with toast on it, so I'm guessing they're eating breakfast, because that also wouldn't really make sense otherwise, so, yeah. Right, but as we get started with Sua Squad, Oki's just sitting here, and he's just like, so guys, apparently the special battle sims are starting today, and I gotta wonder, though, what's so special about them, right? I mean, we know the battle sims, but what about special battle sims? What makes them special, right? And Yui's just like, well, they're just battle simulations, right? So it can't be too different from the past few days. I mean, makes sense, right? And Osamu's just like, hey, at least that'd be good news for us, right? Since we're sort of getting this thing figured out, right? And Sua's just like, yeah, because we could just stick to our winning tactics. Man, I don't even need to read this chapter. I'm just predicting it. Yeah, I didn't remember any of that, to be honest with you. But we see Katori here, and she's just like, well, the obvious answer is that and we see Katori here. She's just like, well, the obvious answer is that it'll be like what we've been doing, except with some weird extra rules tacked on, right? And Oki's just like, so how weird are we talking here, right? And Katori's just like, for instance, maybe you get like double points for beating Four Eyes or something like that. And Osamu's just like, well, that means some squads just beat an obvious disadvantage, right? Which, I mean, it makes sense. Like, if you've got a bunch of glasses wearers on your squad, then you're just going to get mowed down, right? Like, all right, let's look in Volume 24. What squads have the most characters with glasses on them, right? Of course, Kodera from Kodera Squad 6 has some glasses on. Of course, we got Osamu. Hana has some, but she's the operator for Kitazoe's squad. And to be honest with you, most of these people have good eyesight. It's really just Kodera and Osamu who have glasses. So, yeah, their squads will just be targeted all day with that. So, that's a little funny. The one thing I didn't mention is that, look at that. Katori has a bun. That's pretty cool. I don't think we've ever seen her hair up like that. And also, Yui's got 2 pigtails coming off the back. So, I actually do like that, getting to see these characters in sort of a different way when we actually see them. Like, of course, there's no changing what Oki looks like. Like, he either has his sun visor on or he doesn't have it on. And like Osamu, it's either Osamu or it's not Osamu. And then Sua, like, you can't really change up most of these characters' designs. But I do like with the girls, they're sort of putting their hair up in different ways. It's pretty cool and interesting to see, right? Yui eventually just continues just being like, well, that reminds me of the special assignment 2 days back, and it's like, when they asked us to come up with new rules for the rank wars, right? And Katori just thinks back like, oh, that assignment that Sua did? And everybody's just like, yeah, that's the one, in case you forgot from how many chapters ago, that is indeed the one, right? And Osama's just like, oh, hey, speaking of Sua, how did you actually respond to that, right? And Sua's just like, oh, I don't remember. It was kind of like a rush job, right? And Katori's just like, wow, memory of a goldfish. Not the smartest tool in the shed, right? And at this point, we cut to 2 days earlier, right? And this is after collecting all the responses for Special Assignment 3. Of course, the one that Sua Squad was just talking about, right? So as it continues, we see Netsuki's here, and he's just like, alright, now then, shall we review each squad's responses? And everybody's just like, very well, let's do it and all of that. So the rest of this chapter, or at least everything except like the final 2 pages, are all based on breaking down these responses, right? Which can be a lot, so I'm going to try to break them down and just talk about it. But this chapter does a very good job of just explaining everything with just more tactile talking to it. So while I'm going to try to make it interesting, it'll pretty much just be the same thing you read in the chapter. So if you haven't read this part yet, just go read it in chapter, right? And then come back and watch this video, because it really does help just by listening to it, right? But as we start off, Netsuki's just like, so the prompt was to come up with new rules for the rank wars. Yes, I'm going to do his voice now. He says, we'll begin with the more common responses. The answer we see, I'm not doing that voice. The answer we see the most by far involves pitting 2 squads against 2 other squads, right? And he says 5 total squads offered that as a suggestion. They claimed it would bolster teamwork with other squads, which makes sense. And the sort of image we see here is Kakazaki squad teaming up with Yuba squad go against Katora squad and Arafune squad, right? And a team up of 2 squads versus 2 squads. And we see this was suggested by, it was Kotaro Tome from Utagawa Squad 1. It was Oji from Oji Squad 2. Squad 4, Kikuchi Hara did it. Squad 6, Kitora did it. And Squad 10, is it Kurarachi, I think? I think he's the guy who did it. So all of them came up with that response. Director Kinoda then brings up that a lot of people said to split up each sub-rank into 2 massive teams that would face each other. It's sort of like a shirts and skins type of style, right? So pretty much the image we see is like everybody in the top of B rank, right? So pretty much all the squads from like, 1 to 7 or 6, one of those few, right? Pretty much take all of those team members, split them completely in half, don't care about squads at this point, right? Just get the same number of people in each team and have them fight each other. And sort of we just see that, like, for instance, Hughes and Osama are on the skin side, and on the shirt side are Yuma and Chika, along with all the other characters. So they're sort of splitting them up evenly in between 2 teams, right? And we see that Squad 3, 5, 8, and both, Toroya and, what is it, Hasho? Kasho from Squad 9 offered that thinking, right? Carousel is then just like, any thoughts from the perspective of the rank wars management as they go over to Sakuraka, right, who is the head of the rank war, she's a rank wars commentator, and also she is one of the rank wars management people, right? So they pretty much just ask her input on it. And she pretty much just says that aside from the extra labor involved in forming these new groups, which, there really isn't any labor to it. I mean, you just put their names to like a random number to the right and just said, alright, he's on this team, they're on that team. Easy as that, right? And she's like, none of this would create too much additional work. It would just be sort of like a few one-time things, and that'd be about it. And she's like, I think these ideas would all be very simple to implement in, right? Carousel is like, alright, that makes sense. And eventually, we go back over to Netsuki, and Netsuki's just like, however, these shirts versus skins ideas run into issues with point 2, right? Point 2 is, it takes into account where the suggestions could be offered realistically and implemented as a new standard for rank wars, right? And the way he sort of says that is by forcing all of the B rank members to participate in such a large match, that would leave the defense teams out in Mikado City, would leave them all very low, so there won't be too many people to actually go out there and help defend against neighbor attacks coming in. So while it would work for a story perspective, it doesn't really work logistically, right? He continues just saying that for every one of these matches, they'd have to rearrange the schedules of A-rank agents, and that would pose a lot of issues. And, what was her name? Sakuraka. No, it was Sakuraka, right? She's like, and pretty much says that that's exactly right, and that is the current reason, and that is the reason that current Rank Wars format is split into night and day shifts, so that, yeah, makes perfect sense, right? And they even point out that only Squad 5's Hikari touched on that point, and he pretty much says that implementing this will require a staggered schedule. For instance, the top sub-rank would fight on a Monday and Thursday, the mid sub-rank would do it on Tuesday and Friday, the bottom sub-rank Wednesday and Saturday. Updating ranks would have to happen on the weekend, right? So pretty much makes sense what he's saying, right? A big logistics sort of deal. And we even see that Director Reno is just like, yep, that's a nice, easy, concrete solution, right? Not too much to think about there. Kinu then says, oh, here's another suggestion that would be a cause for scheduling problems, as we see that both Squad 9's Toroya, and I just said this guy's name like a minute ago, Kasho, they both said that agents not participating in a given match can watch the match and submit a report on observed battle tactics. But then if everybody is fighting, that would just make even less sense for the logistics of, hey, we need people in defense duty, right? Which doesn't really make sense, because they're like, that answer came from Squad 9, the smart kid team, and you'd think the smart kid team would think of that, but maybe they just got school smarts, not practical applications. And Reno even says, just like, some kids just love doing their homework, right? They continue just saying that then Kasho from Squad 9 and Sazumori from Squad 11 pretty much had the idea that all of the B ranks joined in a sort of tower defense sort of game. So all B rank could be split into a siege team and a defense team for a fortress defense match. Sort of the same shirts and skins ideas, but just a little different, pretty much saying that, hey, these people have a POI to protect, these people have a POI to gain, right? And while Sakuraka says that sounds sort of fun, Rendo's just like, siege team aside, I'd worry that the defense team would turn it into a game about time management, right? Which makes a lot of sense there, right? He just continues saying that, while in reality, you often don't have time to plan strategies in the heat of a defense mission, right? So Kinu is just like, I mean, that makes sense, but not for the rank wars. This idea might work well if implementing a special training exercise, right? Eventually, Carsalis is like, this one is on the mild side, as we see that both Squad 5's person and Squad 8's E.M.M.I pretty much had the idea that, while keeping the standard three-way battles, we could add a tower defense element, right? So it's already the same exact rank wars format, but just adding a new element to shake things up, right? And Sakuraka is even like, hey, that wouldn't interfere with the schedule at all, right? But eventually Netsuki's just like, but squads with more agents would have the advantage in a match like that. And he sort of laughs for a second as Rendo's just like, hey, that's pretty funny how that suggestion came from two snipers, right? Which makes a lot of sense, because they could just sit on top of their POI and just snipe anybody coming towards it, right? But it also does open up the same idea of, most squads already have 3 combatants and 1 operator, and whenever you have 4 combatants, that already is like a higher up, like you're already got a leg up in that sort of regard. I mean, granted, in the Rank Wars format, it lets your opponents get at least 1 more point, maybe helping them rise up faster, but for people aligned against 3, that's a little hard to beat for just 1 team, right? And then Netsuki continues saying that E.M.M.I also proposed that a few times per season, they hold a handicap match in which 1 top-ranked B-rank squad versus 3 bottom-ranked B-rank squad, right? So pretty much what he's saying here is, like, you take a very high top-ranked, like, for instance, E.M.M.I squad, Kaguya squad number 2, or at this point, you know, like, number 3 or whatever, being, yeah, they're 3 because Osamu squad or Tamakoma 2 is now squad 2. I think that's the right thing. Don't quote me on that, right? But pretty much have a handicap match where they'll fight all the low C-rank teams. So that's a pretty fun idea. But then again, Sakuraka just says that could be very interesting, but putting together the matches and scoring them would be a true headache. Eventually going to another one of Sasamori's ideas, right, from Squad 11. And she's just like, this idea seems a lot more realistic from a management perspective. The whole idea is to have 3 matches should involve a top, middle, and bottom ranked team. Defeating opponents from a rank higher than one's own would award bonus points, right? Granted, it doesn't really help out the top squads, but it does help out the more bottom ranked squads, so that's pretty cool. We eventually go back over to Rendo's. Rendo just says, for both of those last 2 ones, the reasoning would be this would give lower ranked teams valuable tactical experience, right? And Natsuki just says that my concern when it comes to unbalanced matches is that the losing team could take a serious hit to their self-confidence, right? Kurosawa just says, but on the other hand, in a real-life battle, you're likely to come up against opponents whose qualifications or skills put them on a whole nother level, right? And like I said, I recently read the entirety of the second Great Neighbor Invasion, and yeah, a lot of those characters like Hyren, and I honestly forget most of their names. I remember Hyren, there is Inadora, and of course Husei or Hughes, and Vista, and then I forget who their commanding leader was at this point, but that wasn't Hyren, it was something else. But the whole point is a lot of those characters, those humanoid neighbors, were a lot stronger in almost every single one of the B ranks, right? Or even A ranks. Like, a lot of them had to come together to even be one. It was Rambine. Rambine is the one I'm thinking of. The commanding leader is Hyren. That's what I'm thinking of, right? But, I just said his name. Rambine, for instance. You had to have a massive force of, like, some Ozma Squad guys, Yonea, Kodera, like, a bunch of them to just take him down. Midorikawa also. So a lot of people come to take them down. So in the field, if they would have lost that match, yeah, that would have been a massive self-confidence downer. But also, as Kurosawa says, that's also very likely to happen. It is now 1 day later from when I recorded that last segment that you just heard, and just to set everything straight, the commanding leader of the first or the second Great Neighbor Invasion was Hyren, and Rambine was the big berserker guy who fought Yonea and a bunch of other major of the characters, right? You had Inadora, Husei, and Vista. I remembered most of the other ones, I just couldn't remember Hyren and Rambine, right? Please don't blame me there, right? But as we continue on with the chapter, Natsuki sort of sets everything back on track as he's just like, alright, let's get back to the more common responses, as he says that 4 different squads suggested different mock missions against Tryon soldiers, right? We see that Katoe from Squad 1 recommended this. If I could get my volume 24 open in time. We see that Squad number 5, Takari, said it. Of course, Suwa from Squad 7 recommended this, and also Sasamori from Squad 11. So they pretty much just all said the same idea of simulate a defense mission piloting 2 or 3 squads against a large-scale invasion of Tryon soldiers. Squads would compete to eliminate enemies in the fastest time with the fewest casualties. And most of these squads say that the upsides of this is that it would foster a better understanding of what sort of enemy forces are out there and what each one is capable of. And while it would be a bit of burden on management since they'd have to concoct new missions and loadouts every time, and that's what Suwa says, right? Specifically saying that, yeah, if you do the exact same thing over and over again, it almost just becomes like a time attack at that point. So if you can sort of just hold off and have all of the characters go on their own, that makes a whole lot more sense, right? We see that Director Kinuta is here, and he just says, turning it into a score attack mode, is what I just said. He said that I'd fear to end up in defaulting to the same tried and true strategies every time. Pretty much what I just also said. Then Kurosawa just says that on the other hand, trying to tackle a set task as efficiently as possible could definitely lead to creative thinking and massive strategizing, right? And Kinuta's just like, well, I guess that does make sense, but Natsuki then goes and says that 3 squad had this next suggestion, and that is the suggestion of management decides what triggers agents can wield in a given match, right? As we pretty much see that this was also given, again, by Kotoe from Squad 1, Kikuchihara from Squad 4, and Toroya from Squad 9. And we pretty much see that, yeah, trigger loadouts for all squads are predetermined by management, right? And we sort of see a thing with, Kakizaki, Toroya, and Kotoe are all just standing there, and it's just like, today is Scorpion Day, right? Y'all gotta fight for your scorpions now. And we also see that Squad 6 and 10 also had a similar idea, but how they sort of recommend it is that before each match, a list of available triggers is put in front of an entire squad, right? And they're all made available, and the agents on the given squad would have to divvy up the triggers amongst themselves, right? So sort of how we see it here is just all of OG squads sitting at a table where there's a sniper rifle, what is that, an Ibis, I think? We see a Kogetsu there, we see a Scorpion, we see a gunner trigger, and we see what an asteroid looks like, right? So pretty much saying that, yeah, okay, OG squad would have to divvy up that between their members, and it would very much limit what type of triggers some people are allowed to use, because I don't remember if OG Squad had a sniper for sure. I'm guessing they probably did, but I'm just not remembering 110%. But yeah, so say that they have 2 snipers, right? Well, 2 snipers aren't good if there's only 1 sniper rifle, so that's sort of my point there, right? And Sakurakura, or I forget what her name is, because like I said, the first part is Sakuraka, that's it. And then at that point, Sakuraka just says that she likes how much of a freedom of choice that would give it, and think it'd give the rank wars a nice little bit of spice, right? Karasawa then says that as for the reasoning, there were 2 different schools of thought when it came to that. We see for the original idea where it was like every team just got 1 predetermined weapon. All of those people said that getting a taste for triggers that one doesn't typically use could offer a chance to learn about the strengths and weaknesses of other types of fighters. Makes perfect sense. And then we see that Kikuchihara and Kitora had a different outlook on it, saying that this would strengthen one's ability to improvise if in an away mission, if one got into trouble and was left unusable of one's usual triggers, right? Because of course, whenever they go to a different neighbor country, yeah, they're going to be using different weapons than normal. Kinuta speaks up again, just saying that, of course, knowing how to improvise on a mission is critical, but I'm sure they'd rather work on pre-calculatory measures and avoid dire situations like that in the first place. Sort of like, if you have the basics down to a science, you should never have to stray away from those basics to begin with, right? Netsuki continues, just saying that, be as it may, we can hardly anticipate every single problem that might arise. And Rendo says that, meanwhile, some answers are in a more free-spirited direction. And he says, like OG's and Taichi's, to name 2. As we see what they came up with, and they said that each squad would come up and use original triggers with modded functions. And Sakurakura is just like, man, that's another fun idea. As we pretty much see the ideas that Taichi and OG came up with. Taichi came up with a squad shot Ibis, which, okay, he just wants 4 sniper rifles all in one. He's an idiot. We know this. And then we see that OG wanted a whirlwind pierced rapier. Pretty much he just wanted a Kogetsu that could use whirlwind. That was just a long rapier, right? And Kinuta says, like, it's a fun idea, only if you set aside that we lack engineers to even come up with new triggers. So how could we even make that work, right? Because I take it just gluing 4 ibises together wouldn't quite work. Sakurakura just says that we can always give them a simulation tools that adjust trigger parameters and only allow their creations to function on those simulated maps, saying that it's not quite up out of the question. But we also see that Kurachi also came up with something very similar, as his idea was allow us to adjust the parameters for our triggers and try on bodies in the strategy room. Because of course that's one of the big upsides of Borders, that they have their strategy room, and where you can almost do anything. Like we saw Osamu was able to get unlimited try-on in one of those rooms. I mean, that's the one way he took down Kazuma in that initial fight that he had with him, that 1 out of like 25 times or whatever. So pretty much, as Kotoe just gives a few examples, you could have high defense but one shield vanishes after 3 seconds, or high resistance, but one's Tryon body has low mobility, right? And Rindo sort of just says like, oh, sort of like my division's Kyosuke and his Geist, because yeah, that's what Geist does, is it really alters the Tryon body to give a lot of firepower, but not any time to use it, right? So pretty cool idea there. But Kinuta says that they need to set out a bunch of solid restrictions for it, because amateurs might opt for a high-powered monumentary burst mode, as we see another idea of Taichi with just too many explosives on him, and like he just run up and kamikaze himself into the enemy territory, right? And he says that amateurs might opt for a very high powerful that would leave them unable to fight in a very big prolonged battle, right? Sakura just says like, so are you thinking that we'd see a rise in popular specialized builds just for the rank wars? And as she says this, Karasawa just says that there aren't many who can make good use of the ability to fiddle with minor technical settings, right? And we sort of get the idea that I suspect after enough time has passed, everyone would be relying on the same Surfire settings programmed by somebody who knows what they're doing, right? And my favorite part of this whole chapter has to be this like YouTube thumbnail that we just see in the top corner of page 21, right? As just in the corner just says, assured victory, right? Ultimate, the top 10 best trigger settings you can choose for the rank wars, right? As it's pretty much saying that, yeah, over time, a big meta would begin, and there wouldn't be, and they'd have to just tweak it so constantly to make it different, right? I mean, I can think of plenty of video games where it's just like, all right, here's the new meta, right? In Mario Kart, you use like, I don't know, Wiggler with big wheels or something like that. So I find that to be a sort of pretty funny idea, but of course, whenever Ashikaga writes anything, it makes some pretty good sense. But then Rindo sort of pipes back up and he just says that the only sort of redeeming quality of those characters suggesting it is that those would be the three who would be really good at putting together and altering their characteristics to actually make pretty good loadouts. So they would have the upper advantage, but that may be the highest advantage that they would get, sort of. Netsuki starts to say, all right, here's the next one. He says that we have two responses that took a very different approach to adjusting numbers and values, right? As we see that whoever is it that OG from Squad 2 here? Yeah, OG from Squad 2, right? He says that they shuffle the Tryon values around within each squad. And then Suwa from Squad 7 and Kurachi from Squad 10 recommended automatically giving everyone on opposing squads the same Tryon values during the match, right? Saying that both of these concern Tryon capacity, and Netsuki continues just saying that OG says that shuffling the values would foster a greater understanding of one's own squad mates, so pretty much if Chika and Osamu were to switch Tryon, yeah, Chika wouldn't be the cannon, but now Osamu would, right? And he says that while the other two, Suwa and Kurachi, say that they want agents to get a feel of what other Tryon capabilities are beyond the point that they know, right? And we sort of see a little text box explaining that this would tell one whether or not they're relying solely on Tryon or how Tryon correlates to one's win rate. It would be an easy way to compare and measure one's abilities besides Tryon, right? And Kinuta just says that he understands the urge to experiment, but it's risky to artificially power up someone who is naturally low Tryon, pretty much saying that they could wind up with a mistaken impression of whether or not it's Tryon or true abilities doing the heavy lifting, and people just don't have that at times, right? As we get another idea of Tryon, of Osamu having 100 Tryon instead of his like low measly 2%, right? And he's just like, maybe I actually do have what it takes, because they don't want officers to go into battle and risk their lives. Well, you don't want to risk your lives, but you get my point. Rindo then pipes back up and he just says that, on the other hand, it'd be a great way to retain agents who've been relying on their high Tryon levels like a clutch this whole time, right? Netsuki then just continues on saying that, moving on to the more niche responses, we have Katora and Captain Suwa. And he says that they suggest having operators join the battle. as they pretty much say, yeah, operators or other non-combatants would be teleported into a battle as well. They would provide information-based support via a laptop. A Squad 2 operator built out would suffer an instant loss or at least a very high penalty, right? And the reasoning behind that is, yeah, it's just good practice for battle alongside non-combatants, right? And Rindo pretty much says, like, hey, that's a really neat idea, and that could definitely happen on away missions, right? Because if you have an operator, if an operator dies or bails out, yeah, I mean, they can't help you as great as it would, right? And we also see that Sakura just says that it wouldn't be too tricky to implement on the simulated maps, right? And we see that Karasawa pipes up again, and he just says that Kitora combined that first idea with another. And pretty much her idea is to designate buildings and NPCs on the map that occur in a large penalty if destroyed, right? And so she's sort of envisioning a defense mission taking place outside a hazard zone in civilian areas, right? And we see that, yeah, Netsuki's just like, that could be certainly the case of a large-scale invasion, because, I mean, that's what we saw in that large-scale invasion, the second one, right? He also then says that Kikuchihara is another A-rank agent that had another great idea that hints at away missions. His idea was don't reveal the identity of the opposing squad. All opposing agents would share a common anonymous avatar that prevents visual identification, right? His reasoning being that this instills a habit of observing the opponent's movements and triggers. It also forces one to be aware of not needlessly revealing one's old weapons and strategies, right? Again, makes perfect sense. You won't know who you're fighting if just an enemy comes and attacks you. This is just why I love World Trigger, because of this. And Netsuki even pipes up and just says that he's clearly taking into account combat scenarios in the neighborhood, right? Rindo says that that's also a very good point. On away missions, you can often make a good guess about what opponents' tactics are based on their moves and overall vibes, right? Sakura just says that, and that's another one that we could implement without any delay at all, right? And we finally get to the last one, as we see that Netsuki finally says, finally, I'm surprised this idea only came up once. Incorporate Tryon soldiers into the squads. And this is, of course, coming from Taichi, from Squad 3. Why was this Taichi's idea? Please don't ask me, but yeah, for some reason Taichi came up with this. As he just says that his reasoning is it would benefit Border if we knew how to wield Tryon soldiers. And Sakuramura just says that we could probably implement that if R&D were able to share all of their collected data with us, right? Of course, we know that they have data. I mean, to be aggressive with them, I mean, we saw Usami do that whenever Osama was training against Marmods at some point. So yeah, we know they have the data for that, but just to make them non-hostile and friendly, I don't see why that'd be a hard thing to implement at all, right? With that, Sakuramura also pops up again and just says that, but who'd actually control the Tryon soldiers? It would have to be the operator, wouldn't it? As she brings up the whole idea of the operator's parallel processing aptitude ratings, right? As we get a look at pretty much all of the operators we know and where they rank on the scale of how many things they can operate at once, right? And on the bottom, we obviously see with a aptitude of 3 is the Utagawa squad operator, who of course we know that she really can't operate at all. I mean, she barely is able to take care of Utagawa herself. And let's see, what is her name? Yeah, it's Rokuda, right? It's Urashima squad. Did I say Urashima? I don't remember. But we also see that there's a lot of other people like that. We see that Hana is at like 5, and for instance, Usami is at like 7. Most of them are at 7. But pretty much saying that if that were the case, we'd see the gaps wide in terms of operators who can multitask at once, right? And Rindo says that Tryon soldiers are mostly capable of fighting on their own, so maybe it wouldn't be such a big deal after all, right? But Director Kinuda pipes up and just says that he would loathe to complain about something that's already been decided, but he says, but ultimately, I think that there would be wiser to keep separate departments from using Tryon soldiers and the agents who wield triggers, right? as he says, like, especially the bottom of the B ranks, he says, a number of them still can't contend against a Marmot in a solo group matchup, right? Just to continue saying that if they suddenly start relying on Triumph soldiers to learn how to fight, they'll fall further behind their colleagues in the middle of B rank and higher, right? Pretty much saying that if they're working with Triumph soldiers constantly, they may fall behind, and whenever they're not able to beat one of these things and they've got one on their team, that wouldn't really work too well, right? As we sort of see that, like, the bottom of A rank can mostly contend with a rabbit, mid B rank can mostly do a Marmot, and then bottom of B rank can do like a hound or rat and all of those sort of other deals, right? And then Karasura says that being said, the rank and file engineers don't also have much combat experience, and if R&D wants to create squads specializing in the use of Triumph soldiers, they'll need feedback from defense mission squads. And Kyuda says that he understands that at a practical angle, but even so, Rindo finally speaks up and says, but on that topic, we'll probably see plenty on day 5 2 days from now, right? And he says, I'll be looking forward to it, right? As everybody just says, yep, I suppose so, right? As they just start talking, and obviously they're implying something here that we're going to get here in like 2 pages, but at this point, Netsuki's just like, all right, next let's use a rubric to assign their scores. And that is the end of that whole scoring flashback. That was a lot. But at this point, we finally get back to Suicide Squad 7 during the sealed environment phase, day 5, as we see that it's finally 9 a.m. and the entirety of Suicide Squad is getting ready to get down on their computers and log on for today and get everything started. Right? And as they're all sitting there, pretty much Suo just says, like, it's 9 a.m., let's get to it now. As everybody's just like, roger that, okay, roger. And of course Osamu is one who just says, like, understood. Like, the most nerdy answer you could say, like, roger, it's pretty cool. Okay, it's just like the normal thing, like, Yui's normal. And then Osamu's just like, alright, understood. It's just pretty funny, right? So, at this point we see that Katori, who is still in her bun, that's pretty cool, is sitting here, and she just says that we should keep going with the, So at this point, we sort of cut through the dialogue as Katori's just here, and she just says, should we keep going on with the delegated assignments? And Yui just said, since we finished the universal ones, and they're just like, yeah, that sounds like a good plan. And Sua just says that we 3 should finish up on the universal assignments today, as we see that Sua's talking to the other 2 dudes, Oji and Osamu. And they're just thinking, like, yep, sounds good to me, we got this. You whoop-de-dee, right? And Sua just says, like before, we'll probably get our rules for special battle sims a little past noon, so... But before he finishes that, he gets a pop-up on his computer, as he just says, alright, hold the phone, I just got something from the higher-ups. As he says, I'm dropping special assignment number 4 in the shared folder. And both Osamu and Katori are just like, huh, what are you talking about? First thing in the morning like this? As we see special assignment 4, and yeah... This is a very interesting one, because we see the pop-up and it says, Special Assignment 4, create Triumph soldiers using the attached software. Each squad member must create at least 1. And then in the little asterisk on the bottom of the page it says that the Triumph soldiers you create will be used as controllable units during the special battle simulation exercises both today and tomorrow at 3 p.m. So this is what makes those special battle sims, is they are using Triumph soldiers, and of course this is what all the Border HQ was talking about here a second ago. And yeah, this is a really cool twist, sort of seeing how everybody will create a different type of Triumph soldier. It's just a really cool thing to see, and I also really like the sort of little app face they've got here, as it just says, like, it's just an app called Create Triumph Soldiers, and it's got, like, the neighbor eye in the middle, a neighbor Triumph soldier design on it, and then a wrench and a hammer, right? It's a pretty cool app design. But Osamu is just like, wait, we're actually creating Triumph soldiers here? And Katori's just like, and not just that, we've got to use them in the battle sims? And Sue says, well, that's a change of plans, everyone. Load up that software. As we see everybody just is like, yep, sure thing. I mean, that's what Osamu says. Osamu says, sure thing. And Katori just says, give me a break. And that is where we end off this chapter of World Trigger, chapter number 237. This was a 31-page chapter, which is crazy because, I mean, we just got one in September. I know I'm recording this in December and 238 is already out, but oh my gosh, that's just crazy, like how big this chapter actually is and how much dense information is filled in it with the whole idea of here's what everybody said that special assignment, right? This is a very good chapter. I mean, we get the beginning of the outcome of the whole Ninomiya E.M.M.I conflict we had going on there. And of course, we get World Trigger, board meetings and talking, which is fine. I mean, that's what I love this series for, but it was just a lot of talking in general. And of course, the whole twist at the end of this is what makes the battle sim special is this crazy Tryon Soldier creation app, right? So that's pretty cool. My voice is getting very scratchy and very tired. So with that, I'm going to call this video done. If you watch this entire video through to its end, thank you very much. And hopefully you don't mind subscribing to the channel, leaving a like on the video, and maybe commenting down below how good of a chapter you thought this was, right? I'm Glowplasma231. I'll be back next time with World Trigger chapter number 288. Or no, 238. I don't know why I said 88 there. I may also be going a little loony too, right? But yeah, this is Glowplasma231 here, and yeah, Glowplasma231 out.